So it's not long to go now. I'm about to load up the car completely with all the fuel, water, virtually everything except for food. And I'm going to head to the weighbridge. Now that's a step which most people probably forget to take, but it's something I think everyone must do before they head off on a big trip, is actually put their car fully loaded onto a weighbridge and make sure they're not over their gross vehicle mass or GVM of their vehicle. Because if you go overload the vehicle, you're adding extra stress to the car, and also you're driving illegally. And if you do have an accident, your insurance company may refuse to pay you out. So I'll get this car loaded up and then I'll head down to the public weighbridge and see if I come in under or over. If I am over or I'm too close to GVM, then I'll have to do some repacking and remove a few things. But if I'm in a reasonable amount under, then I should be fine once I add the food and my own body weight to the total weight. Okay, so I'm all packed, so I'll head to the petrol station, fill up both my tanks and then head to the weighbridge. I got back from the weighbridge yesterday and it's not looking good for me. Now a GVM of a Defender 110 is 3 tons 50. Now fully loaded with 185 litres of diesel, 71 litres of water and the rest of my gear, I'm coming in at 3 tons. Now I weigh 65, so putting me in the car puts me 15 kilograms overweight with no food on board. Now the only thing I've done differently since my last 2015 trip was that I had to add additional solar panels and a third battery to the car. That weighs around somewhere between 70 to 80 kilograms. It's at least 31 kilograms for the battery alone, which I knew when I was installing it that I would be eating into my available payload for the rest of my gear, but I figured that since my previous trip I also reduced at least 30 or 40 kilograms of gear that I was carrying, which I shipped back home. This unnecessary camping gear I wasn't using. So I spent last night unpacking everything and going through. I managed to remove a few more things, a few of my books, but I have to do something more serious and drastic, which is remove something from the car which is heavy, or convert to lithium batteries, which would save about 17-18 kilograms of battery weight. But the problem is lithium batteries are still very expensive. Searching around, I was able to find one for around $1,000, which is 100 amp hours, which technically you can take lithium much further down to a greater depth of discharge to around 80% without doing any damage at all, which would give me 80 amp hours of usable capacity compared to the 130 amp hour AGM, which I get around 65 amp hours usable, but with far less weight, about 14 kilograms for a 100 amp hour lithium. But if I did that, I'd also have to upgrade my solar regulator to one which can charge lithium batteries, which would cost about another $600. So already it's starting to get quite expensive. I can't remove too much of my remote area gear and spare parts because I need those for really remote stuff where I might end up. That's non-negotiable. So the other alternative is to remove my Mulgo side rails. I'm thinking I'm going to start there first and put them on the scales and start deducting from that. which is a real shame because I absolutely love having them on the car. It makes me feel so much safer knowing I'm not going to damage any of my body panels, and it makes it a lot easier to get in and out of the car at night as well, just using the step to get up into the car. Now of course I do have the full fuel tank and water on board, which technically I don't drive around all the time with 185 litres of diesel. Typically I only fill my primary tank, which is 120 litres, which would give me an extra 65 litres less, or 65 kilograms of weight, which would then be plenty. I'd have enough for me and my food. But then when it does come to more remote stuff, I'm going to want that fuel load or fuel capacity to do the really long distances. And when it comes to water, sure, I'm only one man, 71 kilograms of water does sound like a lot, and there are places, there are plenty of country towns that do have taps available where you can fill up for a small fee. But when I am heading off in the greater desert country, some of the more outback places, I need that just for safety, because if I break down somewhere, I'm going to want that extra 22 litres, that third jerry can, as a safety backup, which would give me around another 4 to 5 days of supply. So I feel at this point in time I want to try and keep that. It's not, obviously I'm not going to have that all the time, but when I do the most remotest stuff, that's probably when I will be overweight as it currently stands. And that's also when I can't afford to be overweight, because I'm probably putting the car through the absolute most amount of stress. But drastic measures have to be taken. I have to hit 3 tons 50 absolute maximum with all my food on board and me inside. So let's start there, and we'll see how this progresses and where I can cut corners and reduce some of my clothing. I think I've probably got a few too many shirts and pants, and just go back to basics. Unfortunately, being a filmmaker and wanting to edit on the road full time, I kind of need the additional solar and battery, which is ultimately what's sent me over the limit. So let's get started. So the rock sliders are off and the original trim is back on. I've saved around 29 kilograms in weight, which minus my 15 gives me a positive 14 kilograms, which I could use for food. But I'll keep looking around the rest of my gear and just keep cutting things down. And like I said, typically when I'm traveling, the 65 litre tank is empty anyway, so it's an extra 65 kilograms of payload available. It's only the really long distance stuff where I don't know how available fuel is that I'll fill up the secondary tank. So I'll head to my boxes now and keep going through. So after a couple of run-throughs on my gear, I've managed to remove this material here, all up weighing 6 kilograms. So it's just some extra books, which I probably don't need to take because I can get all these on Kindle and read them on my computer. A few bits of camping gear, some clothing, and just a few tools which I no longer need because they're double ups. Things like Allen key sets, which I purchased for my old winch, which I no longer have. And my car doesn't use Allen keys anywhere else on it. And the 2 places that do, I have a single key for each of those types anyway. So that's another 6 kilograms. And I've also decided to purchase a lithium battery and a new regulator. It was the only way to remove additional weight to get me down far enough so I feel comfortable. So let's take a quick look at the battery I've purchased and some of the specs it has. So after searching around on the internet, I was able to find a lithium ion battery which wasn't too expensive. I found this DCS 12 volt 100 amp hour battery for 1,199 Australian dollars on sale, which seems quite reasonable. It comes with a 3-year warranty. So if we look at the specifications, it has a 13 kilogram weight, which is an 18.2 kilogram saving off my previous 130 amp hour AGM, which is quite dramatic. Not only that, I get 100 amp hours of usable capacity if you see here under cycle performance, it claims it has 2500 cycles at 100% depth of discharge, meaning you can take it all the way down to zero using all 100 amp hours. Whereas an AGM, generally 50% depth of discharge is the most you'd want to take it down to, which for me would be a 65 amp hour. All up, it claims it has a 5,000 cycle lifespan. It doesn't say as to how far, but likely I'll only take my battery down to around maybe 50% down to 20% absolute maximum remaining. If we look at the AGM lifespan, to get anywhere near 3,000 cycles plus is just impossible, even if you just take the top 20 amp hours off the AGM. It's incredible, this technology, and the amount of weight saving you get. So going through the weight saving I've made thus far, the AGM was 31.2, the lithium is only 14, so I've saved 18.2 kilograms there, minus the 29 for the rock sliders and the 6 of additional gear brings me to 53 kilograms of weight saving. So if I minus that from the 3 tons it currently is, add my 65 in, it comes to 3 tons 12, which is a 38 kilogram remaining payload for food, which should be about right. So I'm technically, when I'm fully loaded with everything in for the longest, remotest trips, then I should be on GVM. Any other time, 65 to 85 kilograms less, as I have less fuel and water on board for general touring around more populated areas. Let's take a quick look now at the regulator I've chosen. It's actually a DC to DC charger, which includes an MPPT solar regulator, so I can still charge from solar, as well as the alternator of the vehicle. It's rated to 40 amp output, so my lithium can take virtually all of that and recharge quite quickly. It's made by Drive. So a little bit more wiring to do, but I'll have a much more better system. I have probably 80 amp hours available capacity, so it means more time, and I have a better regulator, and I can also use the car to charge the battery as well, which I don't currently have, as I kept the third battery completely separate from everything else. So I have another installation video coming very soon for the lithium battery, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching.
Please subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Visit my website roamingtheoutback.com for Australian travel destinations, vehicle preparation ideas and gear reviews. If you'd like to help support the creation of new videos, please consider becoming a Patreon. Click on the Patreon button on the screen now. Thanks.